welcome back to another episode, guys. Tonight, we're going to be talking about high fence hunting versus low fence hunting. This is a very, very controversial topic among pretty much all hunters and even people who don't hunt. There's a lot of people that have problems with it, and there's a lot of people that love it. And one thing I want to add before I go too much further is the last podcast I uploaded, we talked about hog hunting, and I'm trying to do these and inform you guys and share our knowledge with you. And so I'm trying to keep it mixed up and changed up a little bit in between the hunting videos, and so I'm hoping that y'all are enjoying these and learning something and being able to take away from it and use this information in the field. But this is a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a while now, and I just haven't really hunted with very many people that have a lot of experience with high fences up until this weekend, and so I'm really excited about this one. I want to start off by telling you my view of high fence hunting, and then these guys will tell you their views. So my view on high fence places in general is, to me, it all depends on the size. And I mean, with the information that I have right here, this is off of a radio collared, several radio collared deer in Texas, I believe. And the question was, how far did deer travel in their lifetime? You know, what's their area of like where they bed and where they feed, and how far do they actually go in their lifetime? How far do they travel? And it says that annual home ranges on the order of 155 to 418 acres for bucks and 60 to 70 acres for does. So most deer, I would say this is probably a pretty good, pretty accurate study, considering that they put radio collars on deer to track them. And, you know, they say that for bucks they travel, 115 to 160 acres, just an average or kind of above average there. And then does is 60 to 70 acres. And I feel like that's probably pretty accurate. Now, I don't know for a fact that that's the distance, but I would say that high fence places that are 500 acres and bigger are okay. Now, anything less than that, I would say, is just like putting fish in a barrel and shooting them. And I don't really see that as hunting so much as it is shooting, or just killing, whatever. And so there's lots of different reasons for high fences, and that being, growing deer, and a lot of people that breed deer and turn them out for hunting. And I've hunted high fences a couple of times over the last few years, and all the places that I hunted was either a 20,000 acre high fence ranch or a 2,000 acre high fence ranch, and then one other that was about 2,500 acres. So I've hunted 3 or 4 different ones now, and I remember my first hunting experience, and it was on a high fence ranch. It was my first experience, and it was the 2,500 acre place, and I hunted for 3 or 4 days straight, really, really hard. And I was looking for one management buck and one management buck only. I wasn't shooting any does, I wasn't shooting any other deer or any other exotics or animals. I was looking for this one buck. And to continue on that is, you can go out there and you can set your stands up and you can brush in blinds, you can trim shooting lanes, hang your stands, whatever. You can put the feed out there, you're attractant, whatever. You put a feeder out there, and that's all part of hunting. But whether or not the animal wants to show up, that's not up to you. So I agree, and I like high fence hunting to an extent. So 500 acres and smaller, that's not really fair to me, in my opinion. Now you get bigger and upwards of 20,000 acres, that's a much bigger area, much larger area than a deer will ever travel in its life. So basically, they don't know that they're trapped because they never travel 20,000 acres. They stay in the same little 60 to 70 or 60 to 150 acre plot, and they don't travel any further than that. And so I know. I mean, there's lots of different reasons that people do it. There's, like I said a while ago, for breeding purposes and growing big deer and growing exotics. And there's a lot of people, including your uncle, who make a living off of their high fence ranches. They sell hunts, and so I feel like that. It can be a crapshoot, and you can just go in and kill anything and everything, and it's really easy on small places, and then on big places, it's actually a challenge. It's no different than hunting a low fence place. And so, with that being said, I want to hear y'all's opinions, because I know that these two guys right here have different opinions on high fences, and this should be pretty good. So you guys will, if you've made it this far into the video, you will definitely want to stay and watch to the end, because this is going to be a really, really good podcast.
So, in my opinion, I'm all for high fence hunting. I know Gage here, he doesn't agree with me, but I'm gonna try to win him over on this one. So in my opinion, one example for why people hunt high fences, I believe, you got all these people that go to Africa and other countries to shoot animals, and they go there and they cannot bring the meat back. They go there and hunt for horns or for whatever, for the mount or whatever. And if high fences in Texas especially, they're going to have your exotics, just like they are in Africa. They're going to have your scimitar, your aoudad, your everything. So in other countries, you're not allowed to bring the meat back to the United States. Now, if you were to go hunt a high fence in Texas or somewhere in the United States, you are allowed to keep that meat. So that's why one of the reasons I think high fence hunting is a plus, because you can eat the meat. And also, hunting high fence is also a big plus. Is you're tracking a deer all summer long. You got them on camera, coming in, and it gets time around hunting season, and you're looking for this deer, and you got a low fence place, and he hops the fence, and the neighbor shoots him, and you're putting all this work in to kill one deer only, and he's gone just like that. So I feel like if your ranch is over 500 acres and it's high fence, I think that's good, because deer usually does will only travel around 5 miles from where they were born. Bucks will go farther because in the rut and everything, but
and like Dylan said, it's and I've been in the situation on a small little 23 or 24 acre plot that I hunted outside of Meridian and Bosque County for a little bit, and I had some amazing bucks show up, and I hunted really hard for them. I fed protein. I did the whole thing and make sure my stands were right. Only hunted when the wind was right, and then ended up going into the hardware store during the middle of deer season in Meridian. And you walk in and you start flipping through the book, the big buck contest book, and lo and behold, there's my deer right there. And the neighbor that was bordering us shot the buck that I had worked so hard to shoot. And I put in so many hours during the off season planting food plots and putting in the work to pattern this deer and to know when he's coming in and hunting. And it really, really sucked, because I really wanted to shoot that deer. And inside of a high fence, they're not getting out. But at the same time, people want to argue and say, well, that's just not fair because they're trapped in there. Well, my argument for that is, 500 acres or bigger, they would never roam an area bigger than that anyway. So technically, they're not really trapped, because they wouldn't travel any further than 500 acres in their lifetime anyway. So that's a plus side to me, is that you can grow your deer, and you can grow the type and the caliber of deer that you want, and you can keep exotics in there, and that you don't have to worry about them, other people shooting them and whatever. Because I know that some of those exotics are upwards of $5,000-$6,000 a piece, and it would really suck if you turned out a bunch of axis and aoudad and fallow and blackbuck, and then they all just disappeared, and all the neighbors around you are shooting thousands of dollars worth of animals that you invested in to put on your property to be able to hunt. And I know that there's lots of places in Texas, especially out in southwest Texas, like the Sonora area, where axis and blackbuck and aoudad, all of those, and fallow as well, they roam freely, and there's getting to be so many of them that they're everywhere. So everyone has the ability to shoot them. Probably more so than whitetail in some places. There's so many axes, and you know that would be another thing to me is all these non-native species. You know, a lot of people have them in high fence ranches, and you can contain the numbers. You can control how many of them there are, and you know, majority of us here in Texas go out to hunt whitetail, and you go out and I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing to go out and see axis and shoot axis and fallow and blackbuck, but I'm sure there are some of you out there that are watching this video that have gone out all season long and seen nothing but axis does, and that kind of sucks whenever you really want to shoot a whitetail buck. And you know, there's a ranch that I hunted back in the spring. We hunted that ranch, and there were so many axis on that place that you couldn't get the whitetail to come in and eat at the feeders, and so it was really kind of crappy because you know we were there to shoot whitetail and there were no whitetail. So and I remember the landowner also complaining about it too. Is he was like, man, I just you know, I bought the ranch so I could hunt whitetail, and now all I see is axis, and I shoot as many as I possibly can to keep my freezer full, and I give a ton of them away, and I bring people out here to hunt. They fill their freezers, and I'm still overrun with axis. So if you keep these certain non-native species inside of a high fence, then you know that you can control the population, and then they're not going to spread out into other counties and other areas. And whenever we were seeing whitetail, they look terrible. So whenever they're kind of like hogs, except that you know they don't do all this damage, but they're eating the same thing that whitetail are. And if you're there to hunt whitetail and that's your main focus, and all of your axis are clearing out your protein feeders, and you can't feed your whitetail, well then that kind of sucks. And then if you're a low fence place, then their population's growing, they're spreading, they're eating everyone's protein, they're eating everyone's corn, and now nobody can shoot whitetail. And I know that that's kind of a problem mainly just down there in the southwest portion of the state, but you know, I think it's a high fence has many different purposes and many different benefits, and also some downfalls. And I mean, with all that being said, I know that Gage has a completely different view on it, and I mean, I think his view will be very interesting to hear.
I just, just to add on to what Dylan has said, there are some positives to high fencing. And one thing is, like, doesn't your uncle have those African oryx? I read something about in the 80s that they got completely wiped out from the African savannas, and so that animal didn't even exist anymore there, but it did exist in Texas. So that was, high fence ranching themselves, they saved a certain species. So that was a positive that came from it. But you talk about how you can grow your own deer, you can cull your own deer, you can keep your neighbors from shooting certain deer. But I just think that at the end of the day, that's just part of the sport. And we had you were here whenever we had a triple drop time buck out here. I mean, crazy looking deer. You would never thought that in Crawford, Texas, you would see something like that. And that was 3 years. We still don't know what happened to that deer. I feel like if a neighbor would have shot it, I would have heard about it, would have seen it or something. But
people like to brag when they shoot stuff like that.
Yeah, so I feel like I would have seen a picture of it, especially since I know all these people around here. So for all I know, that deer just died, and and he was an old deer, obviously. So, but that was part of it. We never saw that deer again, and we still talk about it today. So we joke about what if we see the triple drop time buck this morning, and we all know that it's not going to happen. He's not around, but don't get me wrong, it sucks knowing that deer is dead and we're never going to see him again. But that's just part of the sport. I remember a couple years ago we weren't seeing any big bucks at all. All we were seeing was little 4 points and 6 points. Well, this year, I mean, it's been 2 years later, and this year I'm seeing.
Got about 6 shooters on camera.
Yeah, I'm seeing bigger deer than I have in a long time, and that's just that's. I just feel like whenever it's on a low fence, it's so much more rewarding because you're having to resist killing this deer that you know if you don't pull the trigger right now, even though he's, you know, maybe a shooter, and you know somebody else might shoot him, that you decide not to pull the trigger, and then you see him the next year. I feel like that's just a whole lot more rewarding than if you know that that deer is not going to go anywhere. So that's what I have to say about it. You know, there is definitely some positives to high fence hunting, and no, don't get me wrong, there is no doubt that once you get to a certain size, a high fence, I don't know if that's 500, I don't know if it's 1,000, I don't know what it is, but I think that report that you read is pretty accurate. So, you know, 400, 500, 600, 700 acres, you know, deer they're not going to go any farther than that. So, you know, I think, you know, once you get to that point that even though it is a high fence, you know, people still dislike the principle of high fence. I think that to an extent it's not a whole lot different.
In my opinion, people think hunting high fence is unethical. It's not fun. You're gonna see what you have in there every single hunt. That's not true. I was down in South Texas at my uncle's ranch probably during Christmas break, so probably about a month ago, and we're after this certain cold deer. It's 7-point, needing to be out of there. And my uncle says, yeah, we got them coming in to a certain stand pretty much every day. Like, all right, well, let's set up a ground blind. We're going to put a tree stand up too, make sure the wind's going to be right. And we hunt there for 6 straight days, and we do not see them. But everybody says hunting high fence, well, you're going to see him every hunt. Well, where did he go? He couldn't have gone nowhere.
Yep.
But where is he? We never saw him. We actually saw him one time driving around checking feeders one afternoon. It's about midday, 12 o'clock, lunchtime. And we saw him, but nobody had a gun, nobody had bow. And that's usually how it goes. When you're not carrying nothing, you're going to see what you're wanting to shoot. And the wind obviously has to be right. We ended up going down there and shooting pigs. If you look down in our videos, we got a couple videos of us shooting pigs down there. We're hunting pigs, and the pigs down there, they're not, you know, they didn't put them in there. They're not growing pigs. They were trapped in there whenever they put the high fence up. So they're not stupid. They're not bottle fed. They're not gonna walk up to you. And so if the wind's not right, they're gone. They're not stupid. They're not gonna sit there and look at you. And so I mean, that's just some of my experiences.
Yeah, the majority of the time around Bosque County, you know, there has been some high fences that have gone up, and this is one of my opinions. This is one of the downsides to it. If you're on the receiving end of a high fence, and what I mean by that is, I was talking about that 24, 23 acre place a little bit ago, and I was hunting a deer really hard, and never saw him. He just disappeared. You know, I hunted him really hard. Actually, no. Another guy shot him. That's right. Another guy shot him, and it wasn't long after that, all of our deer started disappearing, and couldn't figure out why we weren't seeing hogs anymore. Couldn't figure out why we weren't seeing our whitetail, and why the hunting all of a sudden just started sucking really bad. And come to find out, not too far down the county road, somebody dropped a high fence. So that's a downside to it. Is if everyone around you's free range, and then all of a sudden high fences start going up, animals get trapped in there, and you know, then they're not traveling over in this area any longer. And so it really sucks for some of the low fence guys who that's all they have access to, or that's all that they can afford. And now they're having to get the short end of the stick because the high fence went up around where they hunt, and the hunting's gone to crap. And most of the time whenever stuff like that happens, you got to wait several years before, you know, you start seeing the numbers of deer go back up. You start seeing the population of hogs coming back up and on the rise again. And a couple of ranches that I know that have gone up around some of the places that I've hunted is whenever they trap these native deer in there, they just kill them off. They shoot every single one of them. And then they bring genetics from South Texas or from up north because they have bigger antlers. They grow bigger antlers, and they're bigger bodied and whatever. And so it really kind of sucks in that aspect. Like, if you're going to drop a high fence, make sure that there aren't any animals. Like, fly a helicopter over your place, get try to get everything off of it and then start building your fence. And do that daily. And I know that can be expensive, and not many people think about that, but whenever you drop a high fence, you're really kind of screwing a bunch of low fence hunters around you, because you're trapping all the animals in there and then shooting them all so you can bring in different deer. So that's a downside to me, and that's one thing that that really made me hate it there for a little while, because that place that I was deer hunting on, and between Meridian and Walnut, was the only place that I could deer hunt at the time, and it just went to crap. And so it really frustrated me. It really sucked. And then, I hated it for a while, like I said, but at the same time, I started talking to other people about high fence hunting and why they did it, and the reasons why they do it, and what goes on inside of a high fence, and the things that they do to grow animals and to increase the herds, and all of that mess. I mean, there's so many different things and so many different reasons for having a high fence. A lot of them good, and I would say more so good than bad. But at the same time, it can just be a whole frustrating deal, and it sucks sometimes unless you're the guy hunting inside of the high fence. And we can sit here and say the argument about we're not actually trapping them because they don't ever travel this area. I mean, they're not going to travel an area bigger than 600 or 700 acres or 5 miles or whatever in their lifetime, and that's true. But there could be in some situations, like I was saying, where whitetail are traveling between two properties, and then the property over here sets up a high fence, and now this property over here on this side of the county road loses all their deer. And so that's definitely frustrating. But as far as the whole high fence hunting thing goes, I like it. I mean, I do. I like being able to pull through the ranch and know that I don't have to worry about anybody else hunting around me. There's a very large amount of animals. I mean, you're going to go to the stand and you're going to see lots of game. And that's nice, especially with the filming aspect. I can bring a whole lot of content to you guys, and it's interesting because there's more hunts than not. When I go and hunt all my low fence places and my low fence lease, which is where I film the majority of my videos, I go sit at the stand and don't see jack squat. Like, I'd say probably 75% of the time. And there'll be the occasional deer, and I'll see a couple of deer here and there, but I'm not seeing does every sit. I'm not seeing deer every single sit. I'm not seeing hogs to shoot every single sit. And that can get absolutely frustrating. And there's a lot of different arguments, and I want to hear y'all's opinions on it. And y'all just go ahead and drop a comment down below and tell me what you think. And I'm going to read every single comment, because I do for every video, and I'm going to try to reply to every single one of them. And we can be civil about this. We can be mature and have good conversations about high fence hunting, and try to share knowledge and information about why it is people do it and why people set them up. And there's several ranches that actually grow deer and turn them out into free range areas, and not just whitetail but also exotics. They raise these deer and they put them out in free range areas that they still own, and then people come to hunt them. And that's another thing. I was talking to a guy a couple weekends ago when we were up in Oklahoma duck hunting, and he said, "Yeah, I love shooting exotics and I love shooting whitetail, but with my schedule and my job, I don't have the time to go and hunt a free range low fence place and pay for a lease and go out there and be there every weekend. Like, it's not worth it to me to pay the amount of money that it costs for a lease and feeder and stands and the whole setup." He said it's much easier for me to just go to a high fence and have a big chance, or a bigger possibility of seeing an animal, shooting it, and filling my freezer. And that's another thing, is like, that's another benefit to it, is you can show up to these places and spend the amount of money that you would on a deer lease and everything that entails, and go to a high fence place and shoot a few animals and fill your freezer. And that's another thing that I wanted to touch on as well, is you guys know, and especially in my last 4, 5, 6 videos, and then the skinning video that I did on that deer, is just about everything that I shoot I'm gonna skin it and I'm gonna put it in the freezer and I'm gonna eat it, and that's just how it is. That's part of it. And so, being inside of a high fence, your chances of filling your freezer are much higher. But at the same time, like I was saying earlier, you can put in the work. You can hang your stands. You can do everything that low fence people do. You can go sit in that stand, and nothing can show up. I mean, whether that be weather or rain, whatever the case may be, the animals aren't just going to show up, and that's not our choice. And so, I think that there's a lot of fairness in it because it's not up to us whether the animals show up or not, and there's a lot of different benefits. And so, I mean, what else do y'all have on it?
So I just kind of wanted to add on to what Dylan said earlier. You know, he said that we've got about 6 shooters right now. Well, out here for the place we have, that's a pretty dang good number for compared to what we usually have. So, you know, I know for a fact, you know, just judging by the fact that deer season, as far as buck goes, is over now. That we have 5 out of those 6 shooters are still alive on this place, and possibly 6. But we don't know that for sure. So, you know, next year, whenever deer season comes around, especially bow season, you know, in the early season, you know, we're going to be hunting I'm going to be hunting these stands hard, and I just think that you know, if I'm able to take one of those deer, you know, I put all these hours into and all this time, you know, trail cam pictures, hanging my stands, making sure I play the wind right. I think it'll be a whole lot more rewarding compared to, you know, just, you know, somebody who goes and gets in the blind and that deer walks out first hunt and bang, shoots him, and then I just, you know, I don't see I think the ethics on that is just not as good as it is on a low fence place.
Yeah, and I agree with that to an extent. You know, a lot of people think, oh, you're just going to go sit in a high fence and you're going to sit in the stand and immediately a good deer is going to walk out for you to shoot. Boom, hunt's over. That wasn't really hunting. Well, I mean, the second day of bow season, I think it was either October 2nd or October 3rd, me and James have been putting in the work all summer long on the lease and checking trail cameras, filling feeders, making sure the feeders were good, and hunting hogs in the off season. Well, bow season rolls around, and the first day I wasn't able to go. Well, day 2 of the season of 2017, 2018, I go sit in the stand. I'm wearing jeans and long sleeve camo t-shirt, and you know, I'm sitting there and I've got a little buck come in, and that video is down below as well. You guys can go check it out. But you know, I'm sitting there just on the ladder stand hanging out and watching a little buck come up behind me, underneath me, and then out of nowhere, boom, there's one of our shooters. He walks out to the feeder, I draw back and shoot him. So it's just it goes both ways. I mean, sometimes you can go out and you can sit on the second day of bow season and shoot a buck, and sometimes you can go all season and just catch glimpses of your shooters and never even get to draw your bow back on one. And same thing for high fence hunting. And you know, I chased a little buck for several days, and finally he came out, and I was able to shoot him and take him. And I mean, it's just, you just never know. I mean, they're unpredictable in some form or fashion, and they're animals. They're wild, live animals, and some people will bring in fawns, and they'll be a whole lot more tame, and I just don't really see that as being fair. And I actually, personally, if they were bringing in fawns of all these different species and raising them in these high fences, then I'm sure 90% of them, you could shake a can full of corn at them and they'd come running up to you. And I just don't see that as being fair. Now, I can see you bringing in full-grown, live, wild animals and putting them in a high fence, or dropping a high fence around an area that has different species, and then them continuing to continue to populate the area. And those are wild animals. They're going to be just as hard to hunt as if there was a low fence around them or not, or a high fence around them or not. It doesn't matter. And so I could go back and forth all day long, but if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, I've got a 1,000-acre or 1,500-acre high fence place. Let's go shoot some exotics, or let's go shoot some management bucks or whatever." I'm like, heck yeah, let's go. Because not only do I get to bring more content and more footage to you guys, but I also get the opportunity to fill my freezer with some amazing meat. And the challenge is there just the same, as long as it's a big piece of property. And I've said at least 10 times now since this video has started, deer aren't going to travel more than 150, 160 acres in their lifetime anyway. So if you put a high fence around that's 500 or 1,000 acres, they'll never even see some of those fences because they're not going to travel those distances. And so I guess you could say I'm kind of on the fence. And I love hunting. I love low fence hunting, free range hunting, and personally I love high fence hunting too. I love it all, and at the end of the day, I feel like if you're getting out there and you're putting in the work and you're doing what it takes to be successful, and whether you're inside a low fence or a high fence, if you're doing what you love and you're having fun and you're filling your freezer and you're getting to share hunting stories with other people along the way, and you can relate to other people, then I'm all for it. And Gage doesn't like high fencing very much, or not as much as Dylan and I do, but that doesn't mean that we can't come together as outdoorsmen, as hunters, as lovers of all things outdoors and everything that goes into it.
I can guarantee you I will be going to South Texas and hunting on Dylan's uncle's high fence.
Yeah, but
we're going to have a good time doing it.
At the end of the day, when he does go down there, he's going to love every minute of it. He's not going to bash it one single time when he's there. So I don't care what anybody says. Go hunt a high fence and then come back and tell me if you love or hate it.
I will bash it.
And so, you hear him, I'm going to bash it, and I may not like it, but at the same time, it's cool how everybody can come together at the end of the day as hunters and relate and share stories and share their passions and what they love, and everybody can get along and have fun. And so there's many different sides, and Dylan being a more experienced high fence hunter than myself, and Gage, I guess too. It's cool to see how other people view it, and just because there's a big fence around them doesn't mean that they're going to show up. 100 times, like you were saying, you hunted that little 7-point management buck for 6 or 7 days straight, really hard, and caught a glimpse of him at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Whether you see him or not is not up to you. So, all in all, again, I want to hear y'all's opinions on it, and we can be civil about it and we can have good conversation, but I think at the end of the day, whether you absolutely despise high fence hunting or you absolutely love it, we can still relate and we can still talk hunting and we can still get along and we can still agree on certain aspects of hunting and the outdoors and game management. That's very important in conservation, and all of this kind of ties up into one big deal. And there's a line in this imaginary dirt that I'm drawing right now, and you're a hunter and you're an anti-hunter. And so whether you can draw that line this way, and then you can draw another line here on the hunter side where it's the people that love high fence hunting and it's the people that hate it. But at the end of the day, you're still on the biggest side of the line. We're still hunters. We still put in the work. We still put in the hours. Unfortunately, there's a large group of people that hate hunters, and there's a large group of people that think that shooting animals, even putting perfect shots on animals, is terrible, and we're torturing them, and it's cruel and whatever. And so at the end of the day, this line that's drawn this way between high fence lovers and high fence haters, this little line right here can still kind of be rubbed away, because we're all still hunters. We still love to go in the outdoors and fill our freezers and go hunt. And so it's about us sticking together. And in no way am I saying that we have to be rude and hateful to anti-hunters, because it's just as easy to sit down and have a conversation with one of them and educate people and sway their beliefs and their opinions. And there's so many people that think, well, you're not being a conservationist by shooting all these animals and go. I mean, I could sit here and talk an hour about conservation, and I just don't have that time. But go research conservation through hunting, and you will notice that there's more hunters going out and taking animals that are doing good. And then you have this line right here and all these anti-hunters on the other side, and all they're doing is complaining and crying and whining about it. Well, if we have any anti-hunters watching this, here's the deal. Take take your whiny butt and do something about it. And what you need to do is, if you're worried about conservation and us killing all these animals off, then why are the hunters the ones that are starting nurseries and managing deer and growing herds? Why aren't y'all the ones doing that?
Just click off the video.
Yeah, or just click off the video, you know? But, I mean, hunters are the ones that are trying to grow populations of different species and animals. And like, I don't remember which one of you was saying it a while ago. Oh, Gage, it was you, talking about oryx in Africa and how they were completely wiped out of Africa.
They're extinct.
Yeah,
extinct in Africa.
And over here in Texas, there's still a big population. Yeah, they're plentiful. They're everywhere. And that's due to high fences. And so, you know, at the end of the day, like I was saying, we can all come together and we can agree and be like-minded hunters. And, you know, you can have different opinions on high fences and different opinions on different products and places and things and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's still about coming together as hunters and trying to educate and be respectful, but and you don't have to be malicious, but being respectful and talking to anti-hunters and trying to educate them and sway their opinions and try to tell them why we do what we do. And I know with some of the hog hunting videos where we've shot multiple pigs, or I've shot multiple pigs with one arrow, and people get on there and just cuss me up one side and down the other and wish that I would die for shooting pigs or whatever. But the deal is look, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and let them do millions upon millions of dollars in damage. Which, speaking of
We'll
that,
see my property tomorrow.
yeah, we'll see his property tomorrow. But what I'm saying is, like, I have a podcast. I think it was the very first one that I ever filmed, or the second one, and I did all the research on it. And I kid you not, it's from Texas A&M with their research and their studies. The hogs do, in Texas alone, do $52 or $53 million worth of damage every year. And so the way I look at it is, these pigs that are going through cornfields and wheat fields and doing all this destruction, I'm not just going to sit around and let them do it. I'm going to take them out however I can. And so I try to explain that to a lot of people in some of those videos where I've received a lot of hate, you know, about this is why we do it. And in no way was I trying to be rude, but even though they were threatening me and wishing that I would die, I wasn't being rude and malicious in return. I was trying to educate them and say, look, this is why we do it. This is how we do it. And these are the reasons for doing it. Because they're a non-native species. They cause so many millions of dollars in damage. They put people's lives in danger because they are on the roadways. People run into big hogs all the time, and a lot of people lose their life because of car accidents with animals. And so that's the reason why we do it. And there's a lot of people that will shoot them from a helicopter. Heck yeah, I'm going to do that someday. I'm going to film that, and I'm going to post it so you guys can watch it. But, you know, there's so many different ways to manage animals, and I feel like that a high fence is one of those ways. And you said you had something else with it?
Yeah, I just want to touch on one more thing before we go. My uncle, he owns a ranch down in South Texas, as y'all probably know. And he was telling me a story about, you know, the average blue-collared American. You know, they work the 8 to 5. They're not going to have time to, you know, buy a deer lease, go out there 3 or 4 hours away from your place every weekend, set up stuff. They would much rather, you know, pay however much they're paying on a deer lease, hand it in cash, and go out to a high fence place. And more than likely, you know, they're going to see a lot of animals. They're going to see what they want to shoot, and, you know, they're going to kill what they set out to kill.
Doesn't that take a lot of the sport out of it, though? We just talked about so long how, you know, the high fencing. You know, we talked about how it was just as hard to kill these deer on a high fence as it is low fence if you have a certain amount of land. But you just said that it's not. You know, they're going to go in one time and they're going to see that they're going to see a big deer and they're going to shoot it. And so, we can talk all about how, you reach a certain amount of acreage and it makes it more ethical, but, at the end of the day, you can't deny that you have a lot bigger chance to kill a big deer on a high fence than you do a low fence. You can't deny that. That's just a fact. So, I think y'all can kind of figure out how I feel about it. I don't hate high fence hunting by any means because, like Bradley's saying, at the end of the day, we're all hunters. There's no reason for hunters to just bash other hunters for no reason when we have bigger problems to worry about, like anti-hunters trying to take away our gun rights or our hunting rights. I think it was in British Columbia just not too long ago, they took away people's right to hunt grizzly bears. Well, what's going to happen is you're going to start seeing a reduction in moose numbers and elk numbers and all these other species that bears will kill, and because bears do not just eat berries all the time, regardless of what people think. They eat meat too, and so they're going to kill young calves, from young moose and young elk, and before too long,
you too.
yeah, they will kill you too. By the way,
Don't
walk up to a grizzly bear.
Your trash can.
Yeah,
In your front door.
So before too long, the people there are going to have to do something about that, because if not, as a whole, their wildlife will suffer from that.
That's like saying the ag commissioner of Texas is going to put this poison out and poison all the hogs. Well, that's going to affect not just the hogs, it's going to affect the deer, it's going to affect everything that coyotes, buzzards that eat off that dead hog. So, I mean, flying from helicopters is probably one of the more productive ways to get rid of pigs.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last thing before we wrap this up is, I remember you saying a while ago that it kind of takes the sport out of it. It's not as rewarding, and I can agree with that. But I mean, at the same time, whether you're hunting a high fence or you're hunting a low fence, you still have to get up at 4:45 in the morning, or 5 or 5:30, whatever. You still have to get up early. You still have to take your butt to the stand. You still have to sit in the freezing cold weather, and you still have to make a good shot. You still have to put in that effort. You still have to put in that kind of work. And so again, at the end of the day, we're all just hunters here, and it's about conservation and doing what's right for the environment, and it all kind of just ties back into one big picture. And it's cool how that works. And again, like you were saying about conservation a while ago, you don't shoot grizzly bears, well then you're going to start seeing all these numbers decreasing and populations of other animals in the environment in that area. And so, high fence hunting can be great, and a lot of people are against it, and a lot of people love it. And it's good for growing animals and for managing animals. And again, a lot of people do it for a living. A lot of people own ranches and sell hunts, and that's what they do. And it's I feel like this is going to be, in the comment section, it's going to be pretty rough, but
You can't kill them on the couch.
you can't kill them sitting on the couch.
That's what we're doing right now. We should be out there killing pigs,
Yeah.
but
You still got to get up and you still got to put in the work at the end of the day. So, with all that being said, I mean, you guys have anything else?
no. But thank y'all for watching.
Absolutely.
And
I feel like we covered it pretty well. And if you guys want to see another one of these in the future, drop a comment down below about that too, because I'd be more than happy to cover more and on high fencing, and also do maybe a podcast on conservation and my views on it. There's just so many different things that we can sit here and talk about, and I'm going to try to mix it up and throw in some other content in between all the hunting. And I think this is a really good topic that needed to be talked about, and I wanted to let you guys know my opinion on it as well. And so, I mean, again, there's lots of different pros and there's a lot of different cons, and I don't know. I guess you could say that I'm kind of on the fence, but at the same time, I think it's awesome. And so is low fence hunting. All hunting is awesome, and if you're out in the woods and you're putting in the work, you're sitting in the stands, great. That's awesome. So
hopefully in the future we can get some of y'all's ideas, maybe a live video, and y'all sending in some comments and us talk about it. And I want to hear some of y'all's ideas about this subject.
Absolutely. Even if if Bradley's not with us, me and Dylan would be more than willing to do some podcasts. And I know that Bradley has asked y'all to subscribe to us, and
We greatly appreciate
I
y'all.
promise you that eventually we will get some kill shots to y'all. I know it looks like we just go and hang out in trees and don't do anything, but I promise you we will get some kill shots to y'all eventually. Let y'all see what y'all want to see, and just bear with us. We're new. We're getting better at it every day.
And that is the end of that one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know I said I was going to do the giveaway in this video, but it's already 45 minutes long. I'm probably going to be a little bit longer after this. So next video, the giveaway will be in there. Can't thank you guys enough for all the support. Go check out Rock Bluff Outdoors. They will be linked down below. To get 4B merch, it will also be linked down below. You guys can go check out the new t-shirts. I think everything came in for the hats, so those are hopefully going to be up there this week. Other than that, thank you so much for all the support. Love each and every one of you, and I'll catch you on the next one.